Mike, turn your games down.
Another mini episode of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who's shooting some terrorists and aliens with me tonight?
Michael Colby, and I'm wearing red pants.
I'm Zach from Absolutely the Best Podcast, Work in Progress, and I promise not to argue about maps on this episode.
I'm Kyle, and dun 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 dush, dun dun.
Nice. I wish I'd thought of that, actually.
I ddid think of it, but I decided that red pants was funnier for some reason.
Red pants is funnier. I was almost thinking of not countering your joke, but I wanted to bounce off you and say I'm wearing blue pants, but I'm like, no, that joke was too good. I don't want to annoy him. So
yours was good too, so don't feel bad. So you're going to hear talk about a few games, NES games. But first, we're going to start off talking about Contra, developed by Konami, published by Konami, and came out in '87, at least for NES. I think arcade too. I can't tell.
Yes.
Okay, Wiki's bad sometimes.
Yeah, it was the arcade. First came out as an arcade game, and then later into home ports for the MSX2, I believe. I think either the MSX or the MSX2. And of course, probably the most important one, the NES and Famicom.
That's the only version I played. I'm assuming all of us played this on the Contra Anniversary collection of one sort or another.
I've played that specific collection. And I also grew up with the NES version of Contra. I didn't play it in the 80s because I wasn't alive in the 80s. I was born in 1990. I did have an NES growing up from older family members. And for a while, a couple of rental stores in my city were still renting out NES games. And this is one of the few NES games I got to rent out. And yeah, this game is a blast. Just, man, I can't wait to talk about this.
So my history with it is I never got an NES because I had a Super Nintendo, and my dad's like, you don't need an inferior system, is what his wording was essentially.
I get it.
The NES is not inferior to the SNES by any metric.
That's what he always said.
I completely agree.
And he would not buy me one.
No, I get it. It's suburban dad logic. The whole oh, well, this is probably better because it says it's better, so I'll just go with that. It's the parental thing. I get it. I've dealt with my own parents who would use that type of logic whenever I wanted.
So I had played this game multiple times because one of my, I shouldn't even say friend, more like neighbor, someone we knew who was frickin' 7, 8 years older than me, who essentially was a friend with my dad, pretty much. But he had this game and he would play it off and on his NES, and we knew a woman, or girl at the time, who actually could beat this game with only 3 lives, because she was really good at games. And that's my, I never really played it much. I sucked at this game back then, and I still do. But that's my history with it. Zach, what is your history with this game, with Contra?
I played it a ton as a kid. I don't know if we just rented it or if we had actually owned it. I did have an NES in middle school, and I did eventually get good enough to get through it without needing the Konami code. I do have a specific memory of when the rental store that we did go to, they had a Contra competition, like a high score competition. I don't remember how much time they gave you. It couldn't have been more than 10 or 15 minutes. But to get as many points as you could, right? It wasn't to beat the game. And I don't know why in my head I had to get the 30, get the Konami code put in. I spent 5 minutes trying to input it correctly because I don't know if I was nervous or if the controller was just wonky or what, but I wasted most of my time trying to cheat. So I didn't win that one. But yeah, it's a great game. I still enjoy it today. And I still like it on the Contra collection. I think it works just fine on the Switch.
All right. And Colby.
I mean, I'm an old man, so I grew up with an NES, and for my grandmother is actually the one who got me into video games. She's the one who had the Atari. She got me my Nintendo, and for some reason, I didn't know that this was a thing, but even back then, she was like a Konami person. So she would always get the Konami games, and then I would get them after she was done with them.
Good taste.
Yeah, she had great taste, and it's why, even though Konami doesn't make video games anymore, they're still my company to this day. I'll take, Castlevania, I'll take Contra, Silent Hill, all of those Konami classic games. I love them all. But this is probably my most played game on the NES. I don't know what it is about this game, but I think this game is perfect. When I played it a couple of days ago, on the Contra collection on the PlayStation 5, I started with 3 lives and I ended the game with 8. And that's not because I'm not like I'm a great gamer. I have just played this game so many times. I know exactly when every bullet is coming at me and from where. I might be able to play this game with a blindfold on.
Like, you can go to Awesome Games Done Quick and do it.
And this is one of those games that I know that this doesn't mean much to you, Mike Albertin, but the music is perfect. Like, it's one of the reasons that I don't like Super C as much, is because the music in that is not the music in this. I like Operation C better because they use the Contra 1 music.
I agree with that. Entire game.
There's a reason that when you open that Konami collection, the first level of the original Contra music plays because it is iconic.
But isn't it the same music as what's in 3 too, right? Because I have not played a lot of Contra 1, but I played a ton of Contra 3 as a kid because that's what I had on my Super Nintendo. And this music, like all the, it was hitting all those old nostalgic beats in my head.
I think it is a remix of it, or not remix, okay. But it's on a different system. It's going to sound different, right? I'm sure that they spruced it up a little bit or whatever. I would prefer the NES version myself, though.
Yeah, there's something about the Super NES. All the music sounds muffled.
Yes.
But on the NES, the music in this it's so sharp. Like, and every one of these, I don't know what Konami did to put the drums in their music, but Konami drums in, NES games, the Ultra games and the Konami games, those drums just will kick you in the chest. And it's like, they're the only ones that did that.
Isn't one of the channels not a sample, but like you can define the wave for it essentially?
Well,
I don't know.
My turn.
No.
If
you know more, please.
I just wanted to kind of say, just to respond, just simply to respond. So between the NES and the Super Nintendo, they have completely different sound hardware, where the NES is just simple waves and triangles and that sort of thing with 8-bit, sort of the 8-bit sound font. The Super Nintendo sound hardware is based off of sampling. And a lot of the times, the samples can sound very compressed, and that compression can start to sound very harsh, and instruments will sound weird through it. Where the NES is a lot more clear, where even though it's 8-bit, so that the sound won't be as advanced per se as the Super Nintendo, certain instruments will just sound a little clearer. So that's what a lot of what you're talking about, a lot of what you two are talking about with the music is that's the reason why what I'm talking about. That's the reason why what I'm talking about is that the instruments sound better through the NES version because they're not like these really harshly compressed sound samples. Like, I love the Super Nintendo, and I love the Super Nintendo sound hardware. There's a lot of my favorite video game soundtracks are from the Super Nintendo, but like I'm not like I won't deny someone who will say like, oh yeah, the Super Nintendo sound hardware sounds weird. Like, no, it does, because it kind of is. Like, there are certain Super Nintendo games that just sound fucking janky and awkward and weird. Like how I like the first year and a half of Super Nintendo games just sound like. Just are full of like really bad slap bass and like sound and have that like bad funk sound. Like it literally just sounds like the Seinfeld music, that like that music, the Seinfeld music. So yeah, a lot of like super early Super Nintendo games have that, where like, well, really a lot of like American and European early Super Nintendo games sound like that. So most Japanese games didn't sound that clunky, but there were some clunkers even from Japan. But yeah, Konami was amazing with its sound hardware for the NES. Like, listen to the soundtracks for games like the first 2 Contra games on NES. Listen to the soundtrack for Esper Dreams 2, Crisis Force, Lagrange Point. This awesome Japanese only RPG for the Famicom. Listen to that soundtrack. Like, Konami was amazing with the NES/Famicom sound hardware. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
You added some good points. That
I know this isn't
I did not know.
I know this isn't. I know this isn't my turn. I just wanted to say
no,
that.
I like that. Not for this part.
I would like to add to soundtracks to listen to, and that would be Simon's Quest, obviously, but also Roller Games.
That soundtrack fucking. Oh yeah, Roller Games fucking like both
Roller
those games.
Roller Games fucking sucks ass,
yes.
but the music in that is so good.
Oh yes, exactly. Like I know people fucking dog on Simon's Quest as well, but like, yo, those two games have fucking awesome soundtracks. Like,
and also Simon's Quest, as someone who played through all of the classic Castlevania games recently, Simon's Quest is way better than people give it credit for. Like,
I agree.
It is back in the day, like nobody knew where to go because it was one of those Nintendo Power games. And I promise, Michael, we will get back to Contra. But Castlevania 2, now that everybody knows those like three really stupid things, like equipping the gem and kneeling at the cliff face. Like once now that everybody knows that game rocks, and it's also, it's like what made Castlevania be able to do Symphony of the Night. Like you can see a lot of the Symphony of the Night bones in that game.
Oh, totally. Plus, like, there's like a million ROM hacks out now for Simon's Quest that make it like super playable and make it way easier to understand. Like, there's no excuse now not to play it. Like, the game's more accessible than ever. You can watch playthroughs on YouTube if you want to play it, but you don't know where to go. Just like watch a YouTube playthrough. Play the ROM hacks that make the townspeople make sense. Like there's all sorts of cool things you can do with Simon's Quest now. There's no excuse. You can totally play it and beat it. Like it's easier than ever to do so. Sorry, I'm sorry for going off, but just Konami.
Speaking of accessible games, Contra is still very accessible. Like for those that don't know, which I doubt you don't know if you listen to this podcast, but it's one of the early run and gun games that kind of established the genre. If I'm correct.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yep, it did. And you're totally right. Yeah, it did.
And I don't think anybody's done it better since then. I think this game is so perfectly simple, but also like very varied enough that like once people started going like, and this is one of the problems when we get to Super C that I have, is that the stuff that's in this game is like, this is what I want out of a run and gun game. I don't need all the extra bullshit. This is a video game boiled down to its raw essence. This is, if somebody were to say, show me a video game, I think Contra would be the one that I showed them. This is what a video game sort of is. If that makes any sense.
Fair. No, it does, because
that's perfect.
There's not much of a story. You're essentially just running, shooting people, going through levels, but you're constantly doing something. You don't need text. You don't need to know, stage 4 waterfall. You don't need to know any of that crap. All you know is blinking things, shoot it, guys with guns, shoot them, go right. And that's all you need, and that's what makes the game special.
And if you want a story to, Contra 1, just play the Famicom version, because there's fucking cutscenes. They're super quick.
Yeah.
They are super quick. They establish everything perfectly within a few seconds, and it's like, bam, now you're playing.
The Japanese version of this game is better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It definitely is.
It's easier.
There's
no, it's not.
It's supposed to be harder.
I'm sorry, it's not.
I thought it easier.
That's because you were
maybe
using
just because I safe state both. Who you can, but I did beat the game with the Konami code and continues. I did beat Contra 1, but I couldn't get the Konami code to work on the Japanese version, so I didn't bother with that.
Yeah, they didn't have that in the Japanese version. That's the thing. They only had it for the American version. So here's the thing, though, with Contra, between the Japanese version and North American and PAL versions. Here's the thing. The difficulty on the Japanese version is the second loop, where in North America, the difficulty in our version is the first loop. We start off with the first loop and go into the second loop. Japanese Contra starts off on the second loop, because I noticed this because certain enemies take more damage than when they do in the North American version. Like when you shoot out certain turrets, like in the North American version, they only need like 2 shots. Where in like the Japanese version, they take like 4 extra shots, and I'm like, oh, that's
so I got better.
That's usually a sign of like a second loop, like a lot, because a lot of older video games didn't have endings, so they would just have loops. Like, oh, you beat the game, okay, play it again. Beat the game, play it again. Like, and now it's It's more difficult. Now it's more difficult because it's another loop.
Why did Billy Mitchell come to mind when you said that? I'm not okay with that. That's what popped in my head.
I don't have long hair and wear ties.
No, not because of the game's looping and high scores, and I thought of Billy Mitchell. And I'm not okay. The first that came to my mind was that asshole.
But I was just gonna say, like, I don't wear American flag ties and have long John Wick style hair and
nobody should wear American.
But do you have your own? Do you have your own hot sauce?
No, I do not. I don't know what it is nowadays with everyone having their own fucking brand of hot sauce. Like, yes, I get it. It's hot. Shut up. Jesus Christ.
Because they're not actually making the hot sauce. They're just putting their labels on it.
Yeah, and even then, it's not even like actually good hot sauce. It's just repackaged Frank's Red Hot.
Yeah, it's never. Don't talk shit on Frank's Red Hot. It's great on fried chicken and
sorry. I'm sorry.
Frank's Red Hot is delicious.
I like Frank's Red Hot, but here's the thing, though. I like it when it's just Frank's Red Hot. I don't need to buy it 6 million other times, and now it's called John's Ass Reaper and
in a smaller bottle for more money.
And now it's Ginny's Cornhole Firebomb. I don't know, some fucking thing.
They do. It is gross when they put references to how bad it's going to hurt your ass.
I get it. It's hot. Yeah. Okay.
I don't need that. I'll find out. I'll find out the fun way.
Look,
I'll eat it, and then I'll regret it.
I love spicy stuff, but I don't need that like every damn day of my life. Holy crap.
Oh, Contra. So this game is pretty simple.
Sorry.
Can I just? We were talking about the story.
Sorry.
Oh yes, please.
I think that's another reason that I like 1 so much is that you're playing a very standard, you're going through the jungle and then you're going through like the bases and then you're going up a waterfall and then another base and then the snowfield. And you're like, okay, I get what this game is. And then it starts to get a little bit weirder. And then the last level, you're in just the belly of an alien. And it's like,
that's the best.
What is happening with this game? And it's like, it's really cool storytelling because they don't give you any clues as to any sort of alien stuff until you're getting towards the end. And then you're like, oh no, wait a second. This is like weird. And I think that's what got me because as you know, I'm like a Souls guy. I'm like a figuring the story out as you play the game sort of guy. And I think this was the first one that sort of did that because everything else was just like, all right, rescue the princess, go. And this one was like, all right, shoot the guys, go. And then you're like, all right, I'm shooting the guys. Oh, no, wait a second. Where are all these like lasers and stuff coming from? Oh, no, wait a second. Now I'm, fighting a xenomorph head who's spitting out babies of itself. What is happening in this game? And it's just, I think that this is, if there's one complaint I'm going to make about the first Contra, it's that 4 of the bosses are walls. And that's very stupid.
Yeah, that was my complaint was that the bosses are too easy. A lot of them.
Yeah. I don't know about too easy. I think the point is like you're sort of running through this game. I just think it's dumb that, we have really cool like giant alien heads and robots that shoot out stuff and then like UFO thing that shoots out smaller UFO things. And it's like, you could have done this for your bosses. Why am I fighting 5 walls?
Well, I think that's what they fixed in Super C. That's one of the things I like better.
Plenty of walls in Super C.
Well, just in the overhead part, you got to go through some walls, but I don't think are any of the bosses a wall. I guess there's
I don't remember.
Like the stage 5 one, I think, where it's the skull to overhead.
There's less walls. I'm pretty sure, but I didn't think much about that.
There's less walls in Super C, but I think there's like 3. I think there's almost as many walls. But
all right, so are you talking about? I guess okay.
Yeah, and then they just go like, I don't know. There's something lame about the bosses in Super C all being like piles of skulls and like.
Oh, I like it.
Every time
it's effective once, but then it's just like, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah, it's like 5 piles of skulls that you're fighting, and I'm like, I think I would rather be fighting walls than these.
I thought it was just edgelordy enough.
It's so edgelordy.
But I had no complaint with the bosses. I do have one small complaint. I had played a lot of Contra 3, and I'm like, man, Contra 3 just redid all this stuff from 1 and 2, which I did not know.
Yeah.
And I haven't played through these in a long time.
It's interesting though, because then you had such an appreciation for Contra 3, because you didn't have the background of 1 and 2.
No,
So I think that's an interesting way to approach it, actually.
We will talk about 3 at a different time, but I'm very curious to look back at 3 now that I've played this in Super C. I also don't really care for the top-down, or not, the bases in this game. I don't like them. They're bleh.
Yeah, they're meh, but they're also like so short. They're so short. It's like 6 rooms.
So I preferred the top-down levels of Super C to the pseudo 3D levels of Contra, but I think both of them are kind of the low point of the game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I can understand that. I think with this too, I honestly, I don't know, I might sound like the contrarian, but with all of the advancements that all the Contra sequels had and how good they all are, I mean, like, I think Contra 3, Contra Hardcore, and Contra Shattered Soldier and Neo Contra are all like really good games. I gotta be honest, I think my favorite of the series is just straight up like Contra. Like I love Super C. I think Super C is a good sequel, and I love the soundtrack for Super C. I'm actually a little surprised with some of the opinions so far in this. Like I think Super C has great music and has some really catchy tracks. Yeah, original Contra is like my favorite. Like
I'm on board 100% there. I think Contra is the perfect Contra game, and every time they tried to add something to it, they ended up taking away from it. And Super C is great. Operation C is fucking amazing.
Oh yeah,
but they're not Contra.
Operation C is like the perfect Game Boy game because like it may run a little, it may look like it's running a little slow, but that's actually good for the Game Boy because like you ever see a fast moving game on Game Boy, you can't see it because it's so fucking blurry. Like,
that is true.
Like Konami was like, oh yeah, right, everything looks fucking blurry as shit if you make everything look fast, so we'll make everything look a little slower, but that actually works for a game like Contra because you should be slow and strategic. You have guns and every enemy has guns. Everyone's shooting each other. So like, you're shooting the aliens and the aliens are shooting you. Like, yeah, slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
I actually really liked Super C, so I've never played Super C before. I don't know why, but my friend never had it. I mean, I've been in the emulation world for years, but I never touched Super C, even though I have owned the Contra collection for a couple years now, until this week when we were like, let's do both of them. And I really like Super C. I liked it. I was a little upset when I found out that top-down stuff that I was really proud of in Contra 3 was in this game first, and that the first level of this game is kind of like Contra 3 because they're in the little, like, they jump down at you, and I was a little like, oh, like my game copied stuff that I love.
I also came to Super C pretty late in life. I think I only played it for the first time a few years ago. So I think if I was pressed to pick one, I would probably agree that Contra is the best. But I've played it so much, and I feel like Super C is still kind of fresh to me. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it's a really, really good sequel.
I agree that Super C is a great game. There's just like, I have a lot of like little, it's one of those games where it's like, instead of just being bad, it's a bunch of little stuff, and the little stuff builds up on top of each other, and then there's a breaking point where it's just like, all right, fuck this game. Like the game is great. Like it plays great. It feels like Contra. It shoots like it moves like Contra. It does everything like Contra. But the first thing, like one of the first things that it adds is those inclines. And this is going to sound so stupid, but it drives me insane that when you're shooting, you shoot up on an angle when you're on flat ground, and the bullets look like they're coming out of the guns. When you shoot up on an angle, when you're going up one of those angles, it follows the angle of the thing, and it makes it look like it's coming out of the gun sideways. And it drives me insane looking at this thing.
It is a little weird. I'll give you that.
And it's so early in the game that it gave me a bad impression of the game right from the jump. And it doesn't do that in Operation C. Just
they had a couple years
to
go
up those inclines and your bullets are coming out of your gun right. So they could have done that.
No, Operation C actually comes out after both of these because Super C comes out in the year after 1988. So, and then Operation C doesn't come out till 91.
Right. That's what it was. Yeah.
Okay. And then,
so there's your fun.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense that the Game Boy game would have came out later. But then, like, again, it's another sound thing. When you beat a level in real Contra, it's like dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun.
Yeah.
It punches you in the face. For some reason in Super C, the first half of that sting is muffled and it sounds like crap. And then it goes into the one that hits hard. And it's like, why did you do that to the first part of that sting? It's just, again, these little things that build up. And then that first top-down level is fine, but it's just Commando, but it's not as good as Commando.
I disagree. I think as good as Commando is as a game, I actually really like the little top-down segments from Super C.
You got to be like me and not play like 90% in the NES library and have no idea what you guys are talking about. So therefore, this is fresh to me. I'm like, oh, great.
Oh, well, surely you can, come up with Akari Warriors. Like Akari Warriors also better than those top-down sections of Super
Oh God,
C.
Akari. Yeah, but like the NES ports of Akari Warriors are fucking garbage. Like
I grew up with it. I didn't play the arcade version of Akari Warriors or Commando until 5 years after I had been playing the Nintendo versions. So to me, the Nintendo versions are the version.
Ugh, I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah, I know.
Doesn't it have a bug where it just ends?
Well, yeah,
Akari Warriors.
A lot of like, especially Akari Warriors, that game was farmed out to Micronix, which is a terrible game developer, and like did so many awful NES ports. And God.
But if those top-down sections, instead of like busting through 2 walls before you get to the end of it, if it would have just been that first section, if it would have been short and sweet like the behind the back sections of the first Contra, I would have been like, cool, I like that this was, a little bit of a side thing, just like regular Contra has. But it goes on for so long. I'm like, this is longer than a regular Contra level, and it's not as good as a side-scrolling Contra level. Why are they making me do this?
Okay.
No, I can understand that. I also gotta say too, I feel like with a lot of the indie scene over the past like 10 to 15 years, like a lot of the sort of retro indie scene, like everybody wants to make the next best run and gunner, but like honestly, aside from like Metal Slug, nothing has topped Contra, like the original Contra to me. Like I love Super C. Super C is a lot of fun. Contra 3 is, like I said earlier, like it's Super C, Contra 3, Operation C, Contra Shattered Soldier, Neo Contra. Those are all great, but Gunstar Heroes is really good, and Contra Hardcore is really good, and those are all really good. But like aside from like the first Contra and the first couple of Metal Slugs, it's just like, I don't know, those games really got it perfect with like the run and gun concept.
Yeah, nope, I totally agree. Except for the fact that I think Hardcore is better than 3, but that's just because I was a Sega kid. I also think Castlevania Bloodlines is better than Super Castlevania 4 by a lot.
Dude,
Agreed.
Dude, Bloodlines is like literally my favorite classic Castlevania. Like even better.
Really good.
Like I love Bloodlines even more than like Rondo of Blood, and like I love it more than Super Castlevania. Like Rondo of Blood is literally my favorite classic Castlevania, even better than the NES games, and I love the NES games.
All right. So I'm not crazy for thinking that the Sega versions are.
I've never played Hardcorps. I always want to.
Well,
when
we do the 16-bit ones on the show, you'll have to.
We're going to.
Yeah. Although I would advise you, please play the Japanese version of Hardcore. It's a much more like well-balanced game, where the American version of Hardcore, it's 1-hit deaths and it's really fucking hard, where the Japanese version you get 3 hits and then you die. Like I feel like it's it's way more of a balanced game.
Or play the Probotector. I don't think I've ever said that out loud.
That's the
those are awesome.
Yeah, it's robots.
I play when I do these, I end up playing everything. I don't know why, but I get weird. So
I get it. Well, no, you're doing research. Yeah, you're thorough and you're doing
pretty
research.
much that's what I think that's what it is in my brain. It's just like, well, show, just do whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I played
research for your podcast.
I played 5 games for today's episode, so
yeah, I've been playing Contra. I've been playing NES Contra and Super C for this episode because it's just like, God, these games are so excellent and the music is amazing and just the gameplay is perfect. And folks, it sounds like we're praising a lot about Contra, but I don't know if we had anything else we wanted to share with these first two games, because I'm sorry, I want to say this. There's a reason why we're praising only the NES versions of Contra and Super C, because, man, the arcade games have aged horribly.
Yeah,
yes.
They're really bad. I just want to say one more thing about
oh, sure, please.
And the other reason, like the ending of Super C is great. Once you get to level 4 and on of Super C is great. I think the reason that I have a low opinion of Super C is because we get the weird angle bullets coming out in level 1. Level 2 is too long, and then level 3 is a flat jungle. Literally just flat. There's no jumps, and it has like 3 lakes that you have to wade through, and that is it. That level is miserable. And why are you putting your worst stuff at the beginning of this game? Why, like, Contra 1 comes out of the gate so strong. Level 1, 2, and 3, it's like, this is what Contra is. Go. And you're like, great, this is what Contra is. The first 3 levels of Super C are so weird, long, and boring. And then you get to the good stuff of Super C, but I wonder how many people never got past the first 3 levels, because if I wasn't playing I play Super C not nearly as much as original Contra, but if I would have never gone past those first 3 levels, I would have thought that Super C was a pile of shit game. I would have said that this is like an insult to Contra. But it gets good, but you have to wade through shit first. Like, spread your shit out, make it thinner, spread your shit thin, and give us some good stuff sprinkled between the shit.
I agree with you on the jungle level. I don't agree with you on stage 1 and stage 2. I think stage 1 is pretty strong. You have a very colorful background with some lighting effects happening. I think it starts strong. It's not as strong as the jungle level, first level in Contra. I'll give you that, but I think it's definitely the first level is good. And I don't even which one's the second one in Super C?
The second one is the first top-down level. It's the one where
it don't bother me.
It just goes on too long. It's not even bad.
Yeah.
It just is way too long for a gimmick level.
But yeah, the jungle level is pretty boring.
That's the jungle level is boss. It has, because it does the flat, and then it has the spider boss, which is pretty fun, and then it has the earthquake part, which is obnoxious. The last part of that level is the earthquake, and it's give us a bunch of nothing, a pretty good boss, and then this crazy sequence. But once you beat that spider boss, that's when the game gets really good. That's when Super C shine. Because that earthquake thing is really cool. It's fun to do. It's interesting. And it's why didn't you put this, I don't know, earlier? Why did you have to start me out on this level? It's so long that you're on this flat ground, just shooting dudes in front of you and behind you. It's just a whole level of nothing.
Yeah, I suppose they could have started with that one. And then it's starting in the jungle like the first Contra.
Yeah.
I don't think you would have put too many people off of it, because you'll get through it.
Yeah. And again, it's not I think Super C is a great game. It's just you didn't put your best foot forward regular Contra does. Contra 1 starts off so strong. Super C, and then it gets really good. Give me some of that stuff early
from the opening, but I get where you're coming from.
I would also like to point out... Oh, go ahead, Michael.
The helicopter boss in the first level is fine. It's better than the wall, which is the first boss of Contra. Yeah. But it's also shoot the guns, shoot the guys, shoot the big glowing thing. All right, fine.
So here's the thing I really do like about Super C, for sure better than the original Contra, and that is the flame shot. Because in the first one, it does this, like, it's like a circle flame, and it's fine. It's okay. It's not as bad as the laser. But in Super C, it goes a lot faster. It just goes straight, and then it like breaks up into smaller pieces that can take out other.
Yeah.
So I feel like everybody likes spread.
In Super C rocks.
Yeah, everybody likes the spread weapon, and it's still my favorite. But I feel like this gives you a pretty good second choice.
Yeah,
Super C had better weapons.
I'm not mad if I hit if I get a flame shot after I if it comes down and I accidentally get it when I have my spread shot. I'm not mad about it. Like I would be if I got the flamethrower in one while I had the spread. I would be mad.
Yeah.
No, that's completely fair. I did not like getting other weapons if I had the spread shot in one or two, but like the weapons are better. Laser is garbage in both, right?
Totally. It's too slow.
Okay, it wasn't just me.
Laser, I don't have the same problem that a lot of people do with laser. It's just weird that if you don't let it get all the way across the screen, that it disappears if you start a new one.
Yeah,
like, that sucks. But once you get used to it, the laser's like really powerful. Like that's the trade-off there is that the laser's really powerful. If you have a laser when you're at the robot boss that throws the like football things at you,
the little disc things.
It takes like 6 hits to kill him. It's a powerful weapon. You just have to be a little bit more patient than you're used to while you're using it.
Okay, I never used it because I got it and I didn't like it. I have used it in 3. Back when I used to play 3, I remember using it a lot.
It's good in 3.
Okay.
That's my recollection,
It's been a long time.
Well, it'll be soon now.
Maybe. Possibly. Because I want to beat the rest of the Contra collection so I can uninstall it, so yes. I don't keep anything installed.
I will never uninstall the Contra collection.
I install everything. It's just who I am. I delete everything. Like, it's just,
I get it. Yeah. I honestly, like I said earlier, like, I think Contra 1 is, like, almost the perfect game. I love Super C, and I love a lot of the other sequels, too, but like, Contra 1 NES, like, it's amazing not only how well that game is aged, but, like, it's amazing how much they got right, especially, like, when you play arcade Contra, and it's just like, oh, they fixed so much. It's like this plays so much better, and like the controls feel better, and like the controls feel perfect. Like aiming doesn't feel all weird and sluggish. Like it just everything's like a snap aiming, and like everything feels perfect on Contra NES.
Yeah, NES Contra. I think besides Strider, I think Contra is the only thing that's better on the NES than in the arcade.
Oh, no. Rygar and Bionic Commando.
Arcade Rygar.
Yeah, that's right.
Arcade Rygar is... I disagree a little bit. I like NES Rygar. I think it's a little aimless and a little hard to understand at times.
I agree.
And a little too vague. I like Arcade Rygar as a more, like, it knows what it's trying to be a bit, to be honest, and I prefer that. Although I actually will agree on Bionic Commando. Bionic Commando NES is way better. Arcade Bionic Commando is all right, but the controls just feel so sluggish in Arcade Bionic Commando.
I only played Arcade Bionic Commando for the first time last year. I didn't even know that this existed. And Bionic Commando is one of my favorite NES games.
Yeah.
It's a great game.
It's great.
And I saw that they had it on that Capcom arcade thing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I'm like, oh, it's 99 cents. I'm going to buy this. I'm like, of course I want to see what Bionic Commando looks like in the arcade. It sucks. It's really bad. Like, I don't agree that it's okay. It's awful. It is dog shit.
Honestly, Capcom has a few games where I feel like some of their NES ports are better than their arcade ports. And I'm not going to go into that tangent, but I will only say one thing about the NES arcade to NES ratio and Capcom. I think NES Gunsmoke is miles and miles better than arcade Gunsmoke.
Oh, Gunsmoke is a good game. Gun.smoke.
Yeah, Gun.smoke.
Yeah, it's a great game. But yeah, the arcade versions of Contra, you can tell, are games made to take quarters out of kids' pockets.
Yep.
And and that's what it was. That's what all arcade games are.
Yeah.
But when you get a version that plays so well, and it has the snappy aiming, and it had like it's very intuitive to play. It feels good, it looks good, it sounds good, and then you play the arcade version and it's like, oh, you can immediately tell what this game was trying to do, and it was just trying to get money out of your pocket. And a lot of arcade games are made to get a bunch of money out of your pockets, are more fun to play.
The X-Men game, that was fun as a kid.
Yeah, like the beat 'em ups and stuff especially. But these Contra games, I understand that they have to make them hard so that people have to use quarters for continues, but you have to make the game more fun to play so that people want to put their quarters in because they want to keep playing. But these arcade Contras aren't fun enough to have, like, even as a kid, I would have been like, I'm not putting any more quarters into this game. This is not fun to play.
No, I was upset that it didn't have unlimited continues on this version. That upset me.
Yeah, that was such an odd thing for me with Konami in the 80s with some of their arcade games. They would fucking limit your continues. Like, it didn't matter how much money you have. Like, no, that's it. You used too many continues, game over. Just flat out game over. No continues.
Yeah. It was really weird because when I first started it, I'm like, press select or like the left side of the touchpad or whatever you do to put the coins in. And it's like, oh, I'm going to put, 50 credits in there and I'll just roll through this game. And then, yeah, it's just game over. And it's like, well, what about all my credits?
Nope, that's it.
Nope.
Yeah, you should really be able to just pay your way through.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the point of arcade game.
Yeah.
I once put like $20 into Terminator in the arcade. Terminator 2, I mean. And got like all the way to the end and I ran out of money.
And it haunts them to this day.
It does. Well, I finally just watched it like a couple years ago. I was like, I should just see what I missed. And I was like, I don't know why I spent so much money on that game.
It's fun when you're playing it.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't
if
regret
you're looking at it, but all of those shooters are like, I think if you put a gun in my hand in an arcade game, I'm going to have a fun time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you put a big Terminator gun in my hand, I'm going to have a great time.
What if we put a big gun that shoots records while you listen to Aerosmith? You have a good time too?
Yes, but also I don't like having to listen to Aerosmith, and those guns weren't that big in Revolution X.
The music is the weapon.
The music is the weapon.
Sorry, I just had to say that line. Oh my God.
Somebody thought it was a great idea.
Man, they were wrong. Well, no, they weren't wrong. Because that game is fun because you have a physical, the reason that the House of the Dead games, maybe that's what they should have done with Contra in the arcade. Give me, a gun that I can shoot, maybe an endless runner that's a game that you can shoot, and that would be pretty fun. A little foot thing to jump. I'm into it. I'm going to make this game.
Oh my God.
All right. Anything you guys, we talked very briefly about Operation C. Anything to say about it? I don't think there's a whole lot other than it does work. It plays.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Operation C is, I think, a better Super C. I think it has a lot of the same elements as Super C, but I think it's more fun. And it has original Contra music, and even though it's coming out of the Game Boy, so it doesn't sound as good, it's still better songs. And the last boss of Operation C is one of the more fun Contra bosses, I think. The robot that shoots the missiles and then shoots off his hands.
I didn't like him, but yeah.
I think that because it has a very recognizable pattern. It's one of those that if you know the pattern, he's really easy, but you have to learn the pattern and then execute. And that's my style of boss. And it's like just hard enough to be the last boss of the game. And yeah, I think, and he looks really cool. I just think that that's the perfect like Contra final boss. And then you walk through some electric grids and shoot a mother brain who doesn't do anything. And I'm like, you didn't need to add that last part. I could have gotten it.
Oh, and one last quick thing to say about Super C that I forgot about, that the final boss in Super C is from Contra 3. Like, that's where I know him from. And I'm like, hey, that's that guy. So is the heart in Contra 1. That's also in Contra 3. I feel cheated. But all right, let's go to... I know, but it's just funny because since I've never played them, I'm like, oh, All right, let's go to Shelf Stacker Box. And Zach, why don't you lead us in for all three, however you want to rank them.
Okay, Contra is obviously shelf. I toyed with saying box or something just to piss Michael off, but no, that one's definitely a shelf. I would also put Super C on the shelf. I'm going to put Operation C in the stack because I haven't actually played it, but I want to. So maybe someday I will retroactively elevate that to shelf status or box.
It's worth a try. Like, play through it on if you have the collection, or just play through it emulation. Like, it's worth one playthrough at least.
It looks impressive for the Game Boy.
Yes.
It looks amazing for the Game Boy.
Yeah.
All right, and Kyle.
I'm going to say for all three, shelf. Immediately on the shelf. These are all fantastic games, especially Contra 1 on NES. Just absolute bangers of games. Fantastic. Like, honestly, even with the little faults I've mentioned with Super C and, other little things, I would still give these all a 10 out of 10. Like, I think they're that damn good. They're perfect. Like, even with their flaws, they're perfect. These are all perfect games. And also, sorry, one last thing. I have to say this. I hope, I don't know if it's anywhere out there on the internet, but like, I want someone to make a perfect like GIF, the jumping animation from NES Contra, where, if you're Bill or Lance and you jump in the air, you do like a perfect flip, like you roll into a ball and do a flip. Like, that animation is so good. Like, that's such good like sprite animation. I love it. Just that's got to be out there. That perfect flip loop. Like, I wonder if anyone in real life can actually do that. Like, jump in the air and do like a perfect flip like that. Like, no, I know no one can jump that high. That's impossible. But like, I wonder if anyone can just like jump in the air and like quickly roll into a ball and do a flip and then land. Like, oh my God. Like, I'm sure with like a trampoline or whatever, of course you could do that. But like, I don't know. I love that. The idea of someone doing that in real life. Like, I love that flip animation so much. Like, all of the Contra games have it, and I love it. Just that flip animation. Just, I really hope someone has made a GIF of that. Like, and if they have, someone please link me, because I could watch that for hours. I'm not kidding. I could literally watch that for hours.
All right, and I'll go next. I'm going to put Contra 1 shelf, Super C shelf, Operation C in the box. But I'm also not, I don't know, I just didn't like it. I have no nostalgic for it. But more we talked about Contra, and then when I went and replayed it after my initial playthrough, I enjoyed it a lot. But I also really, really enjoyed Super C. So I'm glad to finally have played these. And what about you, Colby?
Oh, all three of these are shelves. I think if we're ranking or rating them, I think original Contra, obvious 10 out of 10. I really, I don't know if it is just nostalgia for that game because I've been playing it since I was 10 years old. But every time I play it, I'm like, this game they couldn't make a better version of what that game is. And they have tried. So many people have tried. But the problem is that they add stuff. And by adding stuff, they're taking away from what Contra is. I think Contra is perfect as it is. I like the Castlevania games better, but I think Contra 1 has the absolute perfect soundtrack. I think it's the best music on the NES, period. It's just a fun, great game. Nothing overstays its welcome. Everything is exactly as long as it needs to be. It feels great to play. It looks great. Absolutely perfect. I think Operation C is next. I think that one is so much better than a Game Boy version of video game should be. I think they did a banger of a job. It's up there with like Metroid 2 and like Castlevania Adventures as far as Game Boy games go. And again, Super C takes a little bit to get going. If you're out there and you have played, Super C and quit 3 levels into it because the first 3 levels are bad, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who did that, push through, because there's some great stuff in Super C. It just takes a little bit to get to. Just get past that spider boss in that 3rd horrific level. Maybe the worst level of any Contra game I've played, and I've played some bad Contra games, but I would rather play something that's bad than something that's just like flat with dudes. that sucks. But it's still, it ends up being a great game. 9 out of 10. Unmuffle the first part of the stinger when you beat a level, and make my bullets come out of my gun at the correct angle, no matter what thing I'm going up. And I think I would like it. It's so stupid that that's the kind of thing I get hung up on.
I'm not surprised.
But if you listen to any of the episodes of this that I've been into, I get hung up on weird stuff. If you listen to my JoJo's Bizarre Adventure podcast, this Bizarre Adventure, I get hung up on little details. I'm a little details guy, and the little details of Super C are annoying. But I'm still putting it on the shelf. I'm still going to play it, more than once a year. I play Contra maybe 10 times a year because it takes it takes like 15 minutes and I'm out.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, that's my thoughts on Contra.
And where's your other podcast people can find you at?
They can go on, you can go on Blue Sky, jackbillingspod.bsky.social, and I've been posting clips of the podcast and other weird stuff that I think of, weird memes and stuff. But the show is called Jack Billings Presents. It is a scripted absurdist comedy podcast where our main character dies at the end of each season, and then we get transported to a different reality with the same characters but slightly different, and they're in different situations. I think it's a really delightful show, and it's, if nothing else, it's different than anything else you'll ever hear.
All right. And Zach?
You can find me on Absolutely the Best Podcast, A Work in Progress. You can just search Absolutely the Best Podcast. That should come up with it. We are going through the MCU. We're going through the MCU and discussing and ranking movies as we go. We just put out Eternals, and then we just did a quick take on the new Captain America movie as well. And Spider-Man No Way Home is all set to go in a couple of weeks.
All right. We'll probably be out by the time you hear this, because this ain't coming out until sometime in March. So, all right. And Kyle.
Well, you can find me on Blue Sky at chibiufo.bsky.social. You can find me on there. And you can find my podcast, the Unidentified Flying Obsession Podcast, or the UFO Podcast, wherever you can find your podcasts.
All right. And if you enjoyed this episode, over 750 other episodes of this podcast, you can find everything we do on Podbean. You can search, and you never know what you're going to find. We do lots and lots of content, so definitely go check out. We do games, movies, comics, TV shows. If you want to support the show, we do it Patreon. You vote in our Patreon polls. We have 1 to 2 a month. If you want to be on the show, if you want to talk about the show, if you want to just lurk and make the number go up, join our Discord. It's free, and I'm always happy. You can suggest things that I'll get to someday. I promise. I'm starting to. Actually, this was a suggestion for the show. This was actually supposed to be in the show back in 2020, but then didn't happen because people quit, and it's been on my mind for 4 years, because once somebody says it, I don't forget it, unfortunately.
Hey, Mike?
Yes?
Hey, Mike, before we end, I just need to ask you a question. If I have an NES controller near you, if I plug it into you and do the Konami code, do I get 30 mics?
Get 30 tokens.
And if you do a bastardized version of it, will you get 10 lives like in Stupid Super C?
I actually do have a fake USB NES controller near me, by the way. in a box for emulation.
That's what I was just about to ask.
Yeah, it's all for emulation, of course. I have a fake Super Nintendo, Genesis 64, NES. I love emulation. I have a fake 360, fake PS3 controller. I mean, that shouldn't surprise anybody. I also have a Steam Deck, so I don't use most of those anymore, but they are there if I want to.
Yeah, you don't want to use you don't want to use even a fake N64 controller anyway.
It gives you the correct experience. Good or bad.
Yeah, a crappy experience.
Don't experience it.
Hey, there will be no Nintendo 64 slander on this podcast. Thank you.
Oh, there will be. As long as I'm on, the 64 will be slandered.
First off, how dare you? First off, how dare you? Second off, how dare you?
All right, and while you're shot my awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Helena at Hell Has Freak, you can follow her on TikTok and Instagram. Definitely go check her out. And check out A Gamer Looks at 40 with Bill Tucker. And please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, audio only, rate and view us for Richard Podcast. I think that's everything I need to say, so we will see you guys all next time. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.